We are with Gary Catrambone, who's running for New Jersey State Senate in the 7th District. Gary, thank you for speaking with Blue Jersey. Before we get into some of the issues, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for Senate?
Sure. I'm a local guy that's been in the same neighborhood for 40 years, got involved in my township's politics because I felt that things were not going in the right direction. So that was several years ago. Fortunately, we've been pretty successful locally and really have addressed many of the issues that we said we were going to address. And what I'm finding is that as we attack issues, many of them are bigger than the township can handle. They're more regional type issues and issues that really requires the state's involvement. So I took the opportunity to put my hat in the ring and see if I could address those issues for our town. You know, we're the river towns, as most folks know. So all but 2 of the towns in the district touch or border the river. So we're all having about the same issues when it comes to that. And there's a lot of traffic safety issues that are also involved.
How long have you been on council, and what's your political experience been?
Sure. Actually elected in '08, so this is my 5th year on council. I've been council president for the 5 years, and it's been a pleasure serving. It really has been. We've had great folks to work with, and we're the kind of council that says, look, we're going to do the right thing and forget the politics. Let's just make sure that what we do is best for the residents and best for the township. And we've made some very tough decisions that were for short term unpopular, but then when folks realized why we did it, they've come around to our thinking. And fortunately, we were just reelected in November by a pretty resounding margin.
Can you give us an example of some of those tough decisions that you've had to make? Sure.
There were some funding issues with the athletic programs that we were paying for insurance, and we suggested that if they went a different way and we removed our funding and our requirements, that ultimately they could get the same coverage for the same money, and that worked out pretty well, and the increase were minimal. We were able to we abolished the sewage authority that some folks didn't want us to do. It turns out it was in a pretty bad shape financially, and it's taken us some time to recover, but we're almost back to where it was before it went downhill.
Okay. You're running against a popular senator who's been reelected several times. What's the approach that you're going to use in the campaign to overcome her relative popularity and your relative unknownness outside of Delran?
Sure. You know, she has won those elections, not by a tremendous margin, and I feel that it's a margin that we can overcome. I think that my approach to serving is one that will resound, that I bring a local experience. I understand what impact the state's decisions have on the municipality, and ultimately those residents, those voters, are the people who are impacted most directly by those decisions.
Your opponent, I think, can be categorized as a fiscal conservative, but she's been a moderate on social issues. How would you categorize yourself?
Well, certainly, you know, fiscally, we've been very conservative. We've had the opportunity to stabilize taxes in Delran. We have never promised to reduce taxes, even though we have. But that's really done from just watching your dollars. It's kind of the old-fashioned way, where you watch every penny and it adds up to savings. You know, socially, and I'm a very open-minded guy. I've had a lot of life experience as an entrepreneur, literally all my life, and having several businesses, having contact with so many people. I get the impact that decisions that folks make, how that impacts others. So, you know, specifically with folks that work for and with me, I knew that every decision that I made in those situations was not just impacting myself and my family, but them and their families.
Okay, let's move on to some specific issues. The state Senate is about to take up some gun safety legislation. Where do you stand on things like background checks, registration, that sort of thing?
Sure. I think that it just makes so much sense and has such incredible support from folks from all walks of life that background checks should be mandatory. I mean, nobody's taking any guns. We're just making sure that the people that shouldn't have guns aren't allowed to go buy them. It's just one of those things that, boy, if common sense were the law, that would be one of the first ones. Mm-hmm. Nobody's taking anybody's guns. Mm-hmm. They're saying that, you know, you're not allowed to do certain things if you're a felon. I would think that one of those should be that you can't buy a firearm. You know, nobody is going into anyone's home and removing their guns. No one wants them to have any less guns. Registered gun owners, legal gun owners, I have no problem with that. That is absolutely should remain in place. But certain people shouldn't have guns. If you're on the no-fly list and legitimately on there, maybe you shouldn't have a gun as well.
Okay. Another highly debated issue in the Senate over the last year or so has been education, both public education, higher education, the Opportunity Scholarship Act with school vouchers. Where do you stand on those issues?
Well, I mean, that's certainly a complicated issue. But let me say that my oldest daughter is a teacher, not in New Jersey, unfortunately. But so my perspective is that the teachers are not the bad guys. That if funded properly and administered properly, that we have a great education system. You know, locally here in Delran, we have a blue ribbon school, and I recognize the quality, the importance of the quality of education. You know, I have an education background, and in that my daughter's involved. I had uncles that were very much involved. My father was a truant officer, so I surely went to school every day, and I always recognize the importance of education, and I just think that we should focus on that, make sure that the schools have everything that they need in order to operate.
What about vouchers, charter schools, support for religious institutions that run schools?
Again, that's a circumstance that right now, I think as the school systems are working, I don't want to weaken the public school system, because those schools have to educate the folks that are presented to them. They have certainly challenges that private schools, parochial schools don't necessarily have. So I don't know that that's really the way that I would be leaning.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the schools are funded primarily by property taxes, and over the last several years, the legislature has struggled to come up with a solution for higher property taxes. What kind of ideas would you bring if you're elected to the Senate in terms of reducing the property tax burden, especially on the middle class?
Wait, there are some things that I've experienced just as a parent. I have two children in the school system right now, in intermediate school and in high school. So I surely recognize things, and sometimes, actually in our first or second year in office, the budget for the school was voted down, and that's really the only time that we get a chance to look at those budgets. And they are so complicated and so restricted. And I think, again, this is a case where if you come from the local level, you see how the rules and regulations that are put in place in Trenton impact the local schools. There are some, you know, there just were so many experiences where, as we were examining the budget, we said, is this something that we can cut? Oh no, that's restricted because that's mandated to do this and to do that. So I think there's a lot of places that we could look into. I would absolutely want to get in there and take a look at that. Obviously, education is important to me, and that would be an area of extreme interest for me.
One of the areas where Governor Christie has really failed to make a dent is in jobs. The state's unemployment rate is the highest in the region. If you're elected to the Senate, what ideas would you bring to help with that problem?
Sure. You know, unemployment hurts everyone, not just the unemployed, but it impacts everyone. And sometimes you have to look at these issues in a way that if you've created jobs and not necessarily the top 1 or 2% that are the job creators. You know, have never been in that 1 or 2%, but I've created employment for folks. I've seen how to do that. I bring the perspective of a guy who's had to make payroll. That perspective is something that you just can't replace unless you've been there.
Moving towards a more local issue, just about everybody in the district has driven up and down the Route 130 corridor, which is one of the most dangerous roads in the nation, not just the state. What's your approach to helping fix that problem?
Well, we've done a couple of things. First, you know, it being a state road, this was actually one of the reasons, one of the really top priority reasons that I got involved in this run for Senate. And that's because it's a state road. Locally, none of the townships can do anything on that road. So there are some things that I find absolutely easy to address. You know, not necessarily the bridge that you know, has been a petition locally, and I've met with those folks to build a bridge over. The Department of Transportation says that they're not used, and I don't know whether they are or they're not. I'm assuming that the studies that they have are accurate. But there are ways to identify that there's a crossing coming up. I drive all the time. I drive that road all the time. And boy, with better lighting, better signals, better signage, to make those crossings where folks, unfortunately, as you know, in the last month or two, have been killed right in Delran, right in our town, that those folks deserve to be protected. These are not folks that weren't obeying the law. The young lady in Delran was crossing in the crosswalk with the light, but it's a light that's always green, and when it turns red, it kind of blends in with the background. I believe there are things that can be done, and I think that because we actually contacted, I was in a meeting in Trenton prior to this last unfortunate accident, and you know, we started the ball rolling, and subsequent to that we've already had another death. So my approach would be, let's get to this and let's get to it right away.
Gary Catrambone, thank you for speaking with Blue Jersey, and good luck to you.
Thanks very much.